Welcome to Not Entirely Unlike Tea with Christine Collins. Hey there, it's Christine Collins, and today we're going to attempt to answer the question why we might sometimes choose having low standards or maintaining a position of apathy, indifference, or distance over the potential of allowing ourselves to get disappointed by an outcome. The interesting thing about disappointment is that it's not just an emotional reaction or a brief passing stance in time. It's an entire neurological process, and it actually demonstrates better than ever how our brains are these highly sophisticated prediction machines and work at all times to try to keep us safe. Sometimes people get a misconception about how our dopamine system works. We often think of dopamine as being tied exclusively to reward and experiencing pleasure, but it actually has a lot more to do with anticipation and prediction. So when we anticipate something good about to happen, our dopamine levels rise before we even get the reward. So oftentimes, it's actually the anticipation or the desire that causes that release of dopamine, leading to us experiencing pleasure, reward, and satisfaction before we actually get to the goal, which is why sometimes, in some cases, achieving the goal itself can feel like a little bit of an anticlimax. Our brain is kind of prepaying us that reward based on what it predicts is going to happen. So that moment when you're sitting down before a really delicious meal, the excitement that you feel and the release of pleasure that you experience is sometimes even more powerful than, say, when you're maybe halfway through eating that meal. The first few bites might seem really exciting and delicious, but the further you get into actually receiving it, the less of reward sensation you have. And that's true of many different kinds of reward, and we can probably think of many different kinds of situations where we anticipate, desire, or wish for something and feel lots of juicy, exciting energy prior to having it happen. And then when it actually happens, it might feel really exciting at first, but then that kind of wanes and goes down over time. Now, what's even worse than that is when reality actually falls short of the expectation or prediction that we had. It's known as a negative prediction error. So basically, your dopamine, which has spiked up in anticipation of receiving something and then would naturally decrease as you receive it, it doesn't just return your dopamine back to baseline, it drops below. So your dopamine level goes down even further than where it was before you started. And this creates that feeling of disappointment and letdown, which feels much worse than if you had never even gotten excited in the first place. So if you never had any expectations about something good happening, like receiving money or finding money, and then you randomly find the money, it's very different than if you had been expecting to see money in a certain place or from a certain situation, and then it doesn't happen, and now you are actively disappointed. You're not just missing out on the reward, you're experiencing an actual neurochemical deficit that goes down below where you started. So dopamine governs the wanting, the motivation, the craving, which can drive us to pursue goals. So it's necessary and helpful as we try to achieve things, but it's a very different system than our endorphins or opioid system that actually creates pleasure from experiencing it when we achieve it. So dopamine spikes during anticipation rather than achievement. So we're literally designed to find the chase more compelling than catching something. And there's obvious survival reasons for why we may have evolved this way. We needed to be able to accurately predict things like finding food in certain places. So we have this motivated of continued seeking behavior, the motivation to find something, food, mates, shelter, and it is much more survival survival critical than enjoying them once they've been obtained. So what happens when that disappointment strikes, reality doesn't quite match up with what we were hoping for or what we were expecting. The dopamine drops below baseline, creating a deflated feeling. Cortisol, our stress hormone, increases as part of our stress response. And the anterior cingulate cortex activates to process the error that's between our expectation and the actual reality. And the insula can become active, that creates sort of a gut punch physical sensation of disappointment, let down. And it can end up leaving us feeling like we're constantly chasing and never really being satisfied. We are trying to navigate with this system that is really more geared towards pursuing things than it is achieving things or finding that space of contentment. And that also helps to explain things like addictions to various things: gambling, shopping, being online, different apps. There's an intermittent anticipation and never consistent satisfaction. So knowing this helps us to better understand why, in some cases, we may find ourselves actually avoiding trying to achieve something or getting our hopes up for something good to happen, because we have an internal sense of awareness that if we get excited about it, if we begin to look forward to it, if we start to think it's possible, there's an innate fear that if it doesn't happen, we're actually going to feel worse than if we had never hoped for it at all. And so people develop kind of a self-protective nature where rather than trying to go for something, they feel like they're better off not even trying at all. However, once you know and understand how these systems work, you can put processes into place to allow yourself to adapt more easily to that system of desire and then reward, and learn how to instill your own self-built in rewards for when you achieve a goal. And that's one of the reasons why having a system of reward is so helpful when you achieve something. So you finish something, you complete a big project, a lot of the dopamine that was driving you to get there may be tapering off by the end of it. You can find a way to reward yourself, perhaps with some relaxation or something else that you really love and enjoy. Additionally, you can build in some self-protective qualities around what to do if it doesn't happen, if there is a level of disappointment. And that can help to mitigate some of that dopamine drop. So you know that it's coming, and now that you understand the neuroscience behind it, you can plan and prepare for it and figure out other ways to manage your emotions and that inevitable dopamine drop if your expectations were there and then they aren't met. And this is why, in many cases, people talk about things like managing expectations, keeping yourself on a realistic trajectory in terms of what you expect, so that regardless of the outcome, you can be kind of pleasantly surprised rather than feel that sting of disappointment. And learning how to work with our neuroscience and learning how to play with and balance our own emotions, you can build upon by using tools like hypnosis, yoga nidra, EFT tapping, many of which are particularly good for managing emotions. Definitely check out in the show notes my Hypno-Pothecary, which is a mindset membership that includes round-the-clock, on-demand access to all of those types of mindset tools. And until we connect the next time, I wish you the most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.